Kind of kills the sound.
It does.
Not quite working, but
Thank you, everybody, for joining us at the Wednesday, September 1st, 2010 meeting of the Arbor DDA. I'm going to do a roll call. Gary Mora.
here.
Nuka Clark. Russ Collins.
Here.
Bob Gunzel. Lee Gunn.
Here.
Roger Hewitt.
Here.
John Heapchuk. Joe Lodestein.
Here.
John Moa.
Here.
Keith Orr. Sandy Smith.
Here.
John Splay.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Susan. The first thing on our agenda is the new DDA board business. I want to welcome in absentia, unfortunately, our new member, Bob Gunzel, who couldn't be here today because of a pre-planned vacation. But we will welcome Bob at our next meeting officially. He doesn't know about the whole hazing thing yet, so we'll have to try that.
Is the electrical part of it?
That's right, the taser thing. So we have a resolution to thank our departing member, Jennifer Hall, and I would like to ask for someone to propose that resolution, please. Second, thank you. And let's see, I think it's in here, isn't it?
Yes, on page 2.
Oh, sorry.
It's on the back.
Yes. I just want to read this resolution. Whereas Jennifer Hall has served with passion and commitment on the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority Board since 2006, including serving as DDA chair in 2008 and 9. Whereas Jennifer Hall brought great intelligence and careful deliberation to the discussion of important DDA projects, as well as a firm commitment to the values and missions of the DDA. Whereas Jennifer Hall encouraged important changes to the DDA processes, meetings, and website to foster a strong sense of public openness, accountability, and transparency. Whereas Jennifer Hall also encouraged a number of signature DDA projects and programs, including approval of the 5th and Division Pedestrian and Bicycle Improvements Project, installation of in-street seasonal bike racks, and expansion of DDA funding for the Get Downtown program and Go Passes. Whereas Jennifer Hall's many contributions have been an important factor in the achievements of the DDA over the past 4 years. Resolve, the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority, on behalf of the downtown and community, thanks Jennifer Hall for her outstanding service during her years on the DDA. Any comment on the resolution? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. It is passed, and we thank Jennifer. Next is our audience participation. We have maximum allowed of 4 people for 4 minutes each. I believe the first person on our agenda has actually declined to come today. So the next person is Paul Gantz from DTE.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm here on a bit of whimsy, and I hope you appreciate that. Again, my name is Paul Gantz. I do regional relations for DTE Energy, which is Michigan and Detroit Edison, and I cover Washtenaw, Livingston, and Ingham counties. And you all know about the underground parking project, I assume. And sitting at these very tables over the past year or so, DTE staff, particularly the Edison side of the staff, have been working very closely with both Ms. Polly and Mr. Ariola's staff to make sure that the conceptual 30,000-foot view gets interpreted properly to utility infrastructure and things of that nature. So I asked the underground folks, I said, I really like historical oddities. If you've ever come to my office, I have things like that. I don't have Oscar trophies for us, but I have stuff like this. And I thought it would be fun just to hand it out because, you know, today's construction project is tomorrow's history. So indeed, you have a little slice of history here. This is a typical underground high voltage electric cable. We think it was put in May of 1976, and for 34 years it served the federal building. It's just one of several cables that typically go underground in a concrete structure. And just so that you know, I've got a description here. It's 3 copper conductors that actually do the work, and that's wrapped in lead to keep it impervious to water and rodents and third-party hits and things like that. And then it's got other layers around it as well. And typically we totally recycle this because it's very expensive. But I thought we could sacrifice a foot or two, slice it up into these little hockey pucks, and it would be something fun to have on your desk or something to keep in your office as a little memento. And I'm here to say thanks. We've had, it's a tough job, and we had a lot of issues to work out. Things like easements. We have to put our stuff in easements. The city had to negotiate easements. And how much room did we have in it? Well, all of that stuff was resolved with a lot of sweat equity in this room and with folks like, who are behind. So just something fun to remind you of the project and our appreciation for a cordial working relationship. Any questions?
I like the peace sign symbolism.
Oh, is it?
I think that's...
I'll pass that along to engineering. I'm sure they miss it all.
That's it.
Do they still use lead
Yes.
as the casing?
Yes. Yeah.
You trying to poison us?
Only if you chew on it.
Put it in your breakfast cereal.
I just want to say thank you. I will add this to my concrete chunks from 4th and Washington, rusty rebars from Hearst and Washington, and this, it's sort of a parking structure memorial I have. It's terrific. Thank
A
you.
fellow industrial sheet collector.
And I just want to also say thank you to DTE, because I know there were some huge issues that had to be resolved in terms of moving those utilities, and there were all kinds of timing issues, and all the reports that I got from DDA staff was how wonderfully accommodating it was as these deadlines got pushed up right to the last minute, and it just didn't look like it was going to be able to happen. There was some miraculous thing that happened, and bureaucrats were moved, and utility staff was marshaled, and the things were accomplished. So thank you to the work of your company to make that happen in the timely way that is so critical to construction projects.
Thanks, Russ. I'll take those compliments back. We get a lot of brickbats and very few bouquets. And that is, it's heartfelt. And as you can see, just one strand of this, it doesn't bend very well. And so on paper, something might look like, well, we could do this, or we could do that. It doesn't bend. You need concrete, you need manholes, you need setbacks, and all these other technical things that kind of get in the way. I'm being gonged. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stop that thing. Next, we have our reports from city boards and commissions, and Ray Detter.
Last night, the Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council had as its guests Police Chief Barnett Jones and also Deputy Chief John Sato, as well as Council Member Sabre Briere. For 2 hours, we discussed in depth the issues of crime, panhandling, and the problems of police enforcement in the downtown area, as well as throughout the town. The discussion was prompted by the expressed concern of downtown residents that petty street crime and aggressive panhandling appear to be on the rise. And with its rise, some downtown residents expressed an increasing sense of loss of downtown public safety. Some of us attributed this to the reduction in sidewalk police presence downtown. One of our members, the condo president of Sloan Plaza, reported 5 security issues in a period of 1 month. I'll quote him. Twice, a homeless person broke into our lobby and stole some minor items. We captured that on video, and he was arrested and is in the Washtenaw jail right now. Other incidents included a stolen bike, homeless people sleeping behind the building, and a smash and grab break in one of the autos there. These are only examples, of course. I mean, there were other examples that were given last night. The CAC members, as well as the police, were impressed with the recent Punk Week concerns, largely made up of recent out-of-town arrivals. Homeless because, essentially, as the police chief says, they choose to be. There is an increase of people sleeping in the streets, parks, under the bridges. Panhandling is more aggressive, and Liberty Plaza is a problem once again, after all the work that we did in that particular area. And you already know of our concerns with regard to Courthouse Square. We think Mayor Heath has done a good job helping us with those issues with regard to Courthouse Square. And last night, we were impressed with the Police Chief Jones and Deputy Seto's presentation of the current police situation. And we admire very much their ability to cope with the problems of crime in this city with drastically reduced police forces. Although this particular year will probably end up being the highest year for race, in general, crime statistics in Ann Arbor are going down. Arrests, on the other hand, are going up. And that with a police force that used to be 216 and is now 124. But the police need help, and this is important to the entire community. This, we feel, is actually a citywide problem. After much discussion, and a lot of discussion of different sorts of solutions, Sabre-Briere was there, and Sabre-Briere plans to present on September 20th a resolution to the City Council to once again reestablish the Panhandling Task Force. Joan Lowenstein knows the result of the last one. We worked for several years in terms of handling this particular problem, 2001 to 2003. And out of that came a revision, thanks to Joan, of the panhandling requirements, and also came some outreach programs and other sorts of directions that were very positive. But now we need some kind of action again. We hope that the DDA, we're going to go also with the Downtown Marketing Task Force, will support the reestablishment of this panhandling task force. We feel it's absolutely necessary. We don't want things to get worse. First, we need to act now. On a lighter note, a different note, I should say, I passed around an invitation to all of you on something the Citizens Council has worked on, and of course the Downtown Ann Arbor Historical Street Exhibit Program. On September 28th, we're installing 3 new wall images, one on the new North Quad facade, telling the history of education in Ann Arbor, one on the front of the facade of the Carnegie Building, talking about the history of libraries in Ann Arbor, and one in front of the Harris Hall, talking about the nature of religious outreach with regard to students in our community. It's going to be a nice dedication where the mayor will speak, and also Todd Roberts and Josie Parker from their various directions, and we hope you can attend. It will be followed afterward by a party to which you're all invited. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that these, it's so wonderful to see some more of these plaques being dedicated, because it's a great contribution to our town, and every once in a while you even see a few students stopping to look at them and read them, and people do pay attention, so we look forward to that. Thank you, Rick. Next is our status of task force efforts. The library lot RFP, is that Susan, or you?
That's
you?
That's
okay.
me.
All right, good.
The committee still has not met since about 4 months ago. I can update you that a consultant has been hired, and they are doing their due diligence on the 2 proposals that are still left, and they will have met with, I think, both of the teams by the end of next month, and so the committee, I believe, is going to meet again sometime during the end of September, and hopefully next board meeting I'll have something to report.
Thank you. Next is the committee to discuss a mutually beneficial agreement with the city. Who is making that report? Roger.
I guess. We have met a couple times in meeting every other week. We've come up with a matrix to deal with the parking issues that's rather extensive, that was sent out with your board packet. I know Susan, I want to compliment her, put a lot of work into coming up with this matrix. It lists, well, I don't think it's in our packet here, breaks the parking down into a number of different specific types of parking, and what the DDA currently does, what the city does, and proposals for changes on those. We've been working through that. We have run into some issues on the parking enforcement end, on some legal issues on access to information on how many tickets a particular car has been issued, whether third parties can have access to that. So there's some uncertainty on that part of it. There are also some uncertainty about exactly how extensive the overall parking management throughout the city would be, under what would and would not fall under that. Also, Susan came up with a draft of proposal on how the DDA would handle the development of city-owned surface parking lots within the DDA area. It's also that was included in your board packet. I thought it was an excellent outline. It proposes doing master planning for those lots, hiring expert consultants to help us through that master planning and through the real estate issues, with very regular reports to council on what we've done up to that point, and asking for council approval at all the decision-making points on going forward with both master planning and any specific development of them, of any specific lot. So that was a very good starting point. We're going to, I believe, discuss that in more detail at the next meeting. We did also discuss this in executive committee, and I think there is a desire, I think, on the members of the mutually beneficial committee to perhaps have a brief board retreat to bring everyone up to date in detail and make sure we are, there is a consensus on the board in which direction we should proceed on mutually beneficial discussions, particularly on issues where there seems to be some conflict on what exactly the DDA could or could not do under a particular agreement. So that was Susan's recommendation. I think it's probably a good idea that everybody on the board is brought up to speed in detail, and we get people's viewpoints on what are the most important issues and what issues we think need to be pursued. So I don't know how we go about scheduling such a thing, but I can.
We can take care of that.
Yeah, we'll put around some dates. And I think it's a good idea, too, because there may be some ideas that have shifted since the time when we first met, have our little mini retreat, and now that there have been a few meetings, we can kind of see where we are and where we need to direct our priorities on that. So that seems to be the consensus about doing that.
Is it reasonable in preparation for that retreat to have the council members of the committee or those that are sitting as representing council give us an update on where they see things are at? I'd be worried about us having another retreat, coming up with another set of things that we'd like to do, and going through what we've seen since that first retreat where we don't like it, but we don't have any ideas of our own. And so it'd be helpful, I think, for that retreat to hear what they think other than no's. I mean, if the reporting has been accurate, which I assume it has been, it doesn't look like there's a lot of feedback coming from their side. So could we put the invitation out to them saying, hey, we're going to meet again. Can you at least summarize from your position how you think things are going, where you'd like to see things are? If we direct them to come up with some stuff of their own, maybe we can have something to react to instead of just coming up with ideas that are going to be shot down.
I certainly think we can ask them for that information. Seems perfectly reasonable. I think the understanding that the committee members are getting are that there are bureaucratic and legal issues that are complicated to make our way through. So we need to understand, what our strategic direction is, how we can overcome impediments and focus on the things that are going to be beneficial for the downtown. And getting input from them, sure. I mean, we can ask them to outline that. I think, in a sense, we need to focus on what we've learned and what we want. And I think that that's going to be the key point. But obviously, if what we want is impossible from a city standpoint, then we can't get it. So getting information from them will be valuable. I just want to make sure that my observation is that we've learned a lot by the discussion, and it's been a productive discussion, and frustrating too, just because you're talking about stuff and it's a complicated reality to work through. So,
but what we want is somewhat irrelevant because they already have what they want. And that's the big worry I have, and that we've had for the past 18 months. And
I wasn't speaking specifically about money. I was speaking in terms of what that mutually beneficial dynamic is. So,
okay.
Well, let's say we can handle that by requesting, once we have a date for our meeting, we can simply request from the council members of that committee if they want to contribute a summary of their points so that we can look at those during our mini retreat.
Okay.
That's fine. And they either will or will not do that.
Okay.
So we can do that for sure.
I believe the next meeting is Monday, the 13th of September at 8:30 in the morning in this room. I will not be able to make that meeting, but there will be certainly other members of the DDA that will be there and can take your comments back.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Roger. Next, we have approval of our minutes from our July 2010 meeting and the annual meeting. I assume all of you have looked over those. Are there any corrections or changes? Oh, Sandy?
Just moving it.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any corrections or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That's passed. Next, we have our subcommittee reports. Looks like, Roger, you're up again
Okay.
for the Operations Committee.
This is the meeting in which we have our quarterly reports. In this case, it is the end of the fiscal year that ended on June 30th of this year. These are the final numbers for that fiscal year, but they are not our audited numbers. These are our unaudited numbers. The audit, does that start, or does that take place in end of next week? Okay. So if there are any differences between these numbers and what we come up with the audit, we'll certainly report those to you at the next meeting. Before we go into numbers, I should say we have putting a few things in place. Because our fund balances are down based on the new construction, we're going to start reviewing the 10-year plan on a quarterly basis at the Operations Committee meeting. Joe is in the process of updating it based on all the changes in the financial situation due to the construction. And we'll have a completely revised 10-year plan at the next Operations Committee meeting, and then we'll, again, be reviewing that every 3 months to make sure we are keeping very close attention to any changes in the finances, both on the income and the expense level. We're also going to look at see if we can get some expertise on advising us on making the financial statements even a little more transparent and a little more readable to the layperson than we currently have. I don't know if we can come up with a better form or not, but we're going to take a look at trying to come up with a form for the financial statements that is as easily understood as possible when you have this many numbers. So if we take a look on page 11, now we should remember that we have revised the budget a couple times during the year, so the variations are not going to be too dramatic. Most of them have to do with the variation in bond rates from what we estimated when we started the budget to what we actually ended up with. This is true both in the TIF income and the TIF operating expenses and the parking operating expenses. We originally had budgeted, I believe, something like 4.5% bond rate, and through a stimulus program, we were able to get our bond rate down to 3.8%, I believe we were at, which allowed us to show some savings in our bond expenses. So if you look at income on TIF, we are less than within 5% of our projected. Operating expenses we're looking at comparing the first two columns, the year to date and the budget to date, which is for the whole fiscal year for these financial statements. This is the end. Operating expenses were down, again, because of the lower bond payments. Capital expenses are also down. A lot of this had to do with the timing of the expenses, these capital expenses, and reimbursements that we got out of the bond payment. We had made some payments on the previous fiscal year that were then reimbursed when the bond was sold. Parking, similar. We were slightly under our projected revenue for parking, but we were within 3%. Operating expenses, again, were lower because of the timing of the capital project and the lower bond payments. Other expenses direct parking expenses were within 4% of budgeted. Going to parking maintenance. Again, income is just a transfer from the parking fund, so that was very close to budgeted. And maintenance expenses were about 4% under what we had budgeted. And similarly, under housing, again, that's money that is transferred up from the TIF. We were a little off because of interest rates were a little different than originally budgeted. and expenses were very close to what we had budgeted. So if you look at page 12, graphically shows the darker line on each of these is what we actually spent versus the lighter line, which is what we budgeted. And again, as you can see, we're generally ended up being very close from actual and budgeted for the year.
On page 14, I see the asterisk, but I'm wondering why it wasn't, on the bond payments, I'm wondering why it wasn't moved to grants and transfers, because currently we don't have any bond payments out of TIF. Is that correct?
Well, we know we have bond payments out of TIF for the State Street project.
Okay, but for the City Hall project, we were going to move that to grants and transfers.
I believe the discussion, and correct me if someone else has a different memory, I believe we thought we would leave it in this because in this fiscal year because it was budgeted this way, but that for the coming fiscal year, we would move that into a grant rather than changing the budget after, at the very end of the fiscal year.
That's fine.
The issue being that the City Hall payment is actually not our bond payment. It's actually a grant to the city to help them pay for their bond on City Hall. So it is technically not really a bond payment of the DDA, it is a grant of the DDA.
And that's a 20-year grant or a 30-year grant?
Likely bond payment, I think it's about 25.
25? So for the upcoming fiscal year, we will budget that as a grant rather than as a bond payment.
And it will reflect in our grant account, as it
Yes.
were, that we have this commitment moving forward.
Moving forward, yes. Certainly entertain any questions. I would like to just point out, which I did also at the committee meeting, and just to review where our fund balances are at the end of this fiscal year. Again, these are unaudited.
What page?
I think the first page,
TIF?
TIF will be on page 13. And our fund balance is just slightly under $6 million in the TIF fund at the end of this fiscal year. On page 15 on the housing fund, we're just a little under 1.4 million in our fund balance in the housing fund. And parking, we are at about 1.2 million in fund balance. Again, we've taken much of our fund balance in the parking system to make down payments on the new underground parking structure, which was, of course, all budgeted, but is now showing up as actual reduction in our fund balance. And I, and with Joe's help, will try and answer any questions people might have. And we did go over the statements in quite a bit of detail during the operations committee meeting.
Any questions?
Sam?
None. Are you going to do the parking separately? Are you going to cover the parking aspect separately?
Yeah, I thought we finished the financial and then look at the parking.
I will wait until you get to parking.
Okay. So no other questions? I guess we are now to parking. Since we didn't have a meeting in August, we have, I believe, both June and July parking figures in here. Yes. June is on page 21 and July is on page 24. We also have fourth quarter parking figures and the entire fiscal year parking figures. If we're looking at, and on page 23, if we want to look at the overall for the year, fiscal year 2010 versus 2009, you'll see that our revenues were up almost 6% over the previous fiscal year. Hourly patrons were up about 4.5%. And this is done with about 200 less spaces in the system. We did have a little dip in revenues in July, which we can to a large degree, attribute to Mother Nature in that our revenues during art fair were down this year. And I'd say probably not just in the parking system, but with many of the merchants in downtown because of the rather awful weather during art fair. So if on 26, you'll see that our art fair revenues were down about $26,000 over the previous fiscal year. And our overall revenues for July were down about $33,000. So most, if not all, that decline was due to art fair, drop in art fair revenue. Hourly patrons, coincidentally, were up a little bit. So looking at these figures, I tend not to put a lot of emphasis on month to month because there are numbers of variations based on events, football games, how art fair goes, and so forth. I think looking at quarterly and annual probably gives us a better feel. Doesn't mean we shouldn't look at the monthlies, but there are always going to be certain circumstances where things drop a little bit. In this case, the torrential downpour we had on Friday of art fair was not helpful to anybody's business. Questions?
Yeah, so I had requested a couple of months ago about having longer-term pictures of the parking represented graphically.
Mm-hmm.
So over the last few years of usage, so that we can see larger trends, and I think it makes it crystal clear when you look at it, over a long period of why you may choose to go forward in adding parking and so on, why we make certain decisions. But with a couple of relevant things in there, including perhaps number of spaces in the system at the time and users that are there. So I would love to see something that goes back, does like a 5-year time period or so.
Well, we can certainly put that on the agenda for the next meeting with, fortunately, with the amount of data that we now capture with our much more sophisticated equipment than we had, 5 or 10 years ago, certainly. We can get that data pretty easily. So we'll discuss that at the next operations committee meeting of what exactly we look at, and it may be a couple months because we're going to spend a lot of time on the 10-year plan at the next meeting. But certainly within the next 2 or 3 months, we can come up with something particularly graphically that'll give you, I think, what you're looking for.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
Makes sense, Chris. Continue.
Okay. Okay, report on Village Green agreements. This is page 27 and 28. This is something really the DDA has not really been a direct party to. Apparently, City Council and the Village Green Development, representing the Village Green Development at First and Washington, have come up with a very detailed timeline for Village Green's approval process and eventual start and completion of construction. Part of that involves DDA actions and involvement concerning the parking structure that the Village Green people are building at the base of this development that the DDA is purchasing from them. So the details are on the top of page 27 as far as the DDA is involved. There are a couple other items scattered through that, but that's where the primary DDA issues are. And again, we are essentially letting staff handle these. Any things that come to policy will certainly come to operations and then to the board. A lot involves the parking agreement, and we don't, as far as we know right now, there are no modifications to what we have already agreed to, or proposed modifications. At least nothing that we have been informed of as yet.
I'm sorry.
Susan, do you know if they made this first deadline? Have you heard an update?
Yes, I know that first deadline, which was a draft amendment for the parking agreement, was produced by the city attorney's office and provided to Village Green. So I know that that first step was done, and so they're on schedule to get to us into the end of this month what this looks like. Just to give you broadly what I understand it to be, this is refinement of what has already been approved. This is the details as it relates to parking construction, for instance. So we've set forward in that agreement that we've signed off on, the city signed off on, that the new structure will be designed and constructed to anticipate a 75-year life. So as an example, this amendment will spell out what that means. It means, for instance, Adrian, as our project manager, has rights to be present during construction meetings, to be able to go on site as needed, just to keep an eye on the quality of the construction, in addition to, say, what the building inspectors will be doing. So we're going to get those kind of details, as I understand them, a little later this month. And we'll know more than what little I've been able to share.
Just not knowing Jerry's schedule or our schedule, just a cursory glance down here, anything with the DDA in front of it, we have 9 days, same day, 7 days, where the city developers are sitting on 30, 45, 60 days. If they're not willing to kind of include us in the draft discussions or copy us on so we can have some leeway, I think it'd be appropriate to go to them and say we have some concerns with our turnaround given we're paying for this thing.
Well, certainly we can. A lot of things are a little beyond our control, but
Well, we have to sign it.
But we have to.
And, to have a same-day turnaround when they're having 45,
Right.
60 days to look at something.
right, some things could be unreasonable. Just, I just wanted for people who might have, fallen asleep a long time ago and need to be reminded and don't have some of these documents in front of them. Our original agreement was completed almost exactly 3 years ago. So that's just to kind of refresh everybody's memory that a lot of the negotiations and what took place has already kind of happened. All of the meaty issues have already been discussed. So hopefully we'll only be looking at some insignificant revisions when we have to look at those kinds of documents. But this isn't a new project. It's kind of the renaissance of an old project.
I would say from a real estate perspective, especially given that Ashley Terrace is set to go back to the bank within 30 to 45 days, it's a new reality of the world. And whether or not we can be hopeful that everything that was negotiated 3 years ago will sit, it's a new world, especially when it comes to construction, and especially given what we understand of the engineering of that site, the water table, the tightness, everything like that. I don't think it's unreasonable to politely ask that we're kept in the loop, even if from a observation standpoint, just so we're not squeezed on things that surprise us.
Oh, sure. And this is another big project for us, and so we're very carefully watching it. More?
Okay, any other questions? On page 29, we have a resolution to reallocate grant funds to support a downtown area skate park. This resolution was requested by Newcomb. I pointed out that I did not feel the Operations Committee was the proper committee to be dealing with the proposed grant. He feels that there is some urgency to this, so the committee is bringing it forward. I have a number of problems with it that I'll discuss during the discussion part. And I would do not want to move this, but I'll bring it forward so Newcomb can move it if he'd like to.
Is there a motion?
And I'd also be open to tabling if someone's willing to second. Okay. I was approached by the skate park. They had asked myself and other.
Wait a minute, is there a motion
Is that
to
a move?
table?
Second to table? Does it have to be brought to be tabled?
No, are you talking about second? Are you moving this?
I'm moving this.
Okay, and I'll
Okay.
second this.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
talk about tabling later.
So, yeah, now it's under
Because you have to
discussion.
discuss it before you can table it.
Yeah, of course. So I was approached by the skate park, as other DDA members were, about possible funding for the DDA for their efforts, and looking at them and talking to them about what it is their efforts, which include Vets Park as well as other things. I think myself and the other DDA members that have been approached were stretching to find how we could directly support something that is the distance it is away as proposed at Vets. That being said, given the support from the county, the city, all the associations, except looks like Carytown, the Neutral Zone, all of our regularly supported friends and neighbors here, and recognizing the importance that all of these organizations have, that giving skaters a proper facility helps make our downtown safe and is less hard on the infrastructure. I came up with this resolution to try to figure out a way to adjust all those concerns and still support them with, relatively a small amount of money. It's less than what we make in a day. Subsequently, understanding that there is a prism that everything is looked through this time of year, and I can understand some trepidation that some of the board members have. I'd be certainly open to tabling it to partnership so we can bring in some people from the skate park and see if it's something that we all can be comfortable with in supporting.
So you're moving to table?
I'd move to table now if someone wants a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on tabling?
Let's not discuss them.
Oh, I thought table was just, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No?
I think we have enough to table. So we will table that.
With a referral to partnerships.
I think if it's tabled, I think you can discuss it in partnerships. We would have to vote at this board to bring it off the table. If it were proposed by partnerships.
Partnerships, any thoughts?
Well, I think you can discuss that at partnerships, but that's how it is.
The resolution's already here. Partnerships could certainly discuss it and, bring back a recommendation.
Right.
Gotcha.
They can refer it, yeah. Yeah. You have more, Roger, or just the...
I believe
Okay.
that's everything.
All right.
And our next meeting is September 29th at 11 a.m.,
Thank
where
you.
we will discuss the free site plan and apparently also the parking agreement.
Okay, hopefully. Thank you. Next is our Transportation Committee. John, would you like to report?
Yes, please. The major thing over the summer has been a couple of meetings with AETA board members and Director Michael Ford. And there really are four specific things of common interest for us. Their work on their 30-year countywide transit plan. Second is looking at Ypsi Ann Arbor service enhancements. A third is discussion again about a circulator, the former link. And the fourth is looking at downtown with the looking through the lens of the Blake Transit Center being redeveloped and what that means. So those are the four things that we've had conversations about, including a meeting yesterday that a few people attended here. I appreciate that. And I think to sum it up, going back to the 30-year transit plan, AETA director and their consultant have been working hard and starting to outreach to the entire county to try to get input from every township, burg, and organization to get input for their transit plan. So their essentially their model is to work through the autumn here and work towards the idea in the spring having a finalized plan. So it's a pretty aggressive schedule over this next few months. I don't think that we can say that they have a lot of, they're too early in the process to really have any conclusions yet to share, but we did have some conversation about what can we do to assist them and what does that mean. One of the things that was talked about was potentially some joint conversation with other DDAs in the county as we look at, as these hubs, if you will, of downtowns, what they may mean to the transit plan and so forth. So I think that's going to be a work in progress a little bit to see what we can do to help provide information. Part of it, one of the questions asked was that idea that as they go to different entities, who and how should downtown be represented, downtown Ann Arbor. So we've really asked that question of them. If we can be that entity that can help them and their consultants for that focus, that's out on the table. So that's something I think they're going to follow up with Michael Ford and Susan will have conversations about. The second thing, the IPSI Ann Arbor transit enhancements. I think most of you are aware, a number of us are interested in seeing what can be done to improve the connection between the two communities. So we're continuing to have those conversations with folks there. They're certainly very anxious and interested in doing it. So then it's really how to do it, what is it, and what will it cost. So yesterday we, I think, got to the point where we were fairly specific about requesting from them models of what this thing may be and what it might cost. And it's really still out on the table as to what it is exactly, but I think that many people feel that maybe the highest priority might be an express service would be the highest and most important starting point. That was the feedback from Michael Ford and all the people he's talked to. And from there it could build on weekend service, evening service, those other things. So I think it's a matter now, we're going to push them to create some models for us to look at and share with, and of course keeping in mind that we have a lot of partners in this, including the University of Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Washington Community College, and see their interests and their willingness to help participate in it. So that's where we are on that. We're going to try to push that one forward a little bit harder. Newcomb had brought up the good point yesterday too, that anything that's budget related, we've got a window of opportunity as we look in the fall here that we'd like to start knowing what we're looking at as we look at modeling budgets.
And that fits in with their time frame too.
Yeah.
For early next year of having some concrete actions.
So there really maybe are, looking at this transit service with IPSI and the next one talking about the circulator, are really two sort of shorter term things. They're looking at this whole county-wide transit plan, which is something over a 30-year period. These are two initiatives that they are, I appreciate the fact that they're willing to take them on in the context that they're also trying to do this 30-year plan. So I thought there was a very positive conversation about that. So the third thing was the downtown circulator. And Keith and Roger were good enough to get together in July, I think, and sort of draft together some thoughts, I guess I'd describe it as, and I think with Susan too, sorry Susan, I think I left you out, of ideas to try to frame what our goals and objectives might be for that. And it was a good starting point. It's nothing formal, it's something of course we'd have to bring to the whole board and have more conversation about, but it was a good thing just to get the appetite whetted. And I think Susan asked the important question yesterday is the ATA board and the director, are they truly interested in participating in this? Because I think in the past it's been a little bit unclear, whether they're really how committed or interested are they. It's a new board, it's a new director, and I thought their response yesterday was quite enthusiastic. And as a matter of fact, and maybe it actually also starts to be a piece of their whole county plan. It can serve multiple purposes. So I think that piece we've sort of put in their court also, to start looking at some models and costs based on this kind of rough scenario that Keith and Roger put together, and Susan. And hopefully that will give us something definitive to start to react to here in the fairly near future. And then the fourth thing we talked about was Blake Transit Center redevelopment and what that means to the general area. In July, Susan, Sandy, and I got together and talked about it, thinking of it. Part of it is looking at that transit hub as being an important piece of downtown and what it means to the development around it and that area in there. Obviously, we've got some prime real estate right near it that is very interested in having good pedestrian connections, good enhancements of services. So part of our conversation yesterday I thought was interesting and valuable, because I think they're continuing to evolve in that direction of recognizing that they they wish to provide services associated, whether it's even if it's coffee, and, those sorts of things that are nice, those pedestrian connections, those amenities to enhance them. And I thought that was a good sign that they're thinking of beyond just sort of the limitations of transit and their specific site. So I think that was a very positive thing. A couple of very specific things we talked about with them was the notion of looking at it as an intermodal station and what that means to pedestrians, bicycles, but also the other forms of transportation, including Greyhound, Indian Trails, Megabus, all those other airport connections. And so that is another piece that Michael Ford's going to follow up, for instance, with Greyhound. Greyhound's very anxious and interested in relocating potentially. I mean, it's an interesting thing to them to consider it, I think, and so that is one piece to look at. The other somewhat related piece is our potential interest in looking at the parking structure across the street, and there are 2,000 or 3,000 square feet potentially available at grade level that could be used for some other type of purpose. Now, maybe that's Get Downtown's office, maybe it's a Greyhound lobby, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But again, those things that might be services associated with the transit center that helps to activate 4th Avenue. So those are, some specific thoughts about it. I think that as that project evolves, as we understand more about what they're trying to accomplish and can react to it, it'll give us something a little bit more real to react to and give them feedback on. And I think they're interested and willing to have us be part of that process and as we move forward. So I think that's sort of in a nutshell the 4 initiatives. Those folks who were at these meetings, is there anything anybody would like to add or that I missed? Do the trick. All right. Any questions in general? Okay. Well, our next meeting is Wednesday, September 29th at 9 a.m.
Thank you, John. That's very complete. Next, another John, capital improvements.
I guess I'll start out by apologizing to everyone for the difficulty in getting into the building today. That's
all your fault.
Yeah.
And I've been assured that that's going to be done by Friday, so we'll see. There are obviously a lot of things going on out there, so I think I'm just going to read down the bullet points that I've been given on the garage and on 5th Division. On the underground garage, foundations have been completed on the east leg of the garage. Shear walls have been completed there also. 95% of exterior walls on east leg are formed and will be poured this month. And those of you who have been over there, obviously the concrete walls are actually starting to go up in that area. Mass excavation is 70% completed with approximately 190 cubic yards excavated and removed so far. Dewatering continues along Phase 2 area. Contractor is working with city to ensure compliance with approved dewatering plan. The earth retention for tower crane has been completed, and the tower crane will be installed at the end of September. And drilling along South 5th by the federal building continues and will be completed in about 2 weeks. Does anybody have any questions about any other questions about what's going on with the underground garage? 5th Avenue division status, electrical conduit work continues at South 5th. Concrete placement will be completed by Friday. The intersection and sidewalk will be open late Friday. And Mike Bergeron gave me his personal guarantee on that, so we have Mike's phone number. All right. And we are working with the city to open parking spaces on North 5th and South 5th. Landscaping work continues along 5th and Division. Any questions about the 5th and Division work?
John, how are all of the traffic changes and pedestrian changes and bus changes that we've made, our whole traffic and pedestrian plan with that, how is that all working out?
It seems to be working out fine. Adrian, would you like to address that in some more detail?
Yes, Adrian here. We are working very closely with the City Project Management Division. They preview any plans to shift traffic, lane closures, etc., because not only the DDA is doing work, but there are other festivals, there are other lane closures for private contractors that need to install air conditioning systems, etc. So we have a certain level of control, but they let us know where we can close, when we can close. It has been a very cordial, very well coordinated, although it doesn't appear so sometimes, relation with the city. So there is a master plan that shows all the closures, durations, etc., etc. Sometimes we find elements that prevent us from completing those deadlines, such as at this corner of Fifth, we could not find a gas main, and it was important that we found the gas main before we could cross the street. But overall, we think we're working within reason and given the existing unknown conditions that are on the ground.
Thank you. And let me say, I'm walking by every day on my way to work, and things seem to be going quite smoothly. There are a lot of things going on in terms of bus rerouting, general traffic rerouting, and obviously as people come into town, both for delivering students coming into town and football games, etc., there's going to be a period of adjustment with each new group coming into town. But after 2 or 3 days, people seem to adjust quite well, and things are running, I think, as smoothly as they can.
Very good.
John?
For both the projects, Fifth and Division and underground structure, any issues or concerns about schedule and budget?
No. We will be discussing further the schedule in the next couple of weeks to get a clear understanding of exactly where we are with schedule. We obviously started the project later than we anticipated, and so we don't know what everything is in terms of schedule in front of us, how that may have affected things, and what other things may have been affected in up to this point. So we'll have a clearer idea, I think, of where we are with the schedule by next month.
Well, associated question: will Chrisman be bringing an updated schedule to the next?
My guess is that they will. Yes.
Meeting
yes.
of the committee.
Yes, I think that's one of our goals, is to have an updated schedule next week at the committee meeting. Okay, and our next committee meeting is a week from today, September 8th at 11 a.m.
Thank you. And last, our partnerships committee, Sandy and Russ.
But not least.
We met, it seems like a long time ago, on the 14th of July. At that point, we heard from our energy czar, Dave Kunkel, who updated us on the program. And it continues to be very successful. We've got a total of 55 buildings audited between the 2 years to date. The data that he showed for the last month was that we had 4 new installations verified and $40,000 spent in the downtown, and a annual savings for energy of $12,500 just in those 4 installs alone. So it continues to be impressive. I think good results. We are getting our auditors a little backlogged, and they're having a hard time getting to all of the businesses that are interested in it. It's not only us, but an awful lot of people now are jumping on the thought of getting the buildings audited. So rather than getting businesses excited about this and then having a long delay before they get in touch with their auditor get back in touch with them, we are going to delay the next round. And I think our application deadline had been September 30th. We're going to roll that back to November 30th just to allow for some more absorption of the processes that are already underway. Is this up on the website at all? Any of the data?
I can check. If not, we can put it up.
I think it'd be kind of fun to see some of our progress that's being made. It continues to impress me. The amount of money that we're able to, one, get put into the downtown, but two, turn back into savings, real savings for these businesses, these buildings. Russ?
Yeah, and I want to comment on the Capital Improvements Committee, just we've gotten reports from the other committees that are doing their diligent work, and the Capital Improvements Committee and the staff of the DDA are managing huge projects. And when they're reported out at the board meeting, they sound just like the energy grant program, which is nice and all that, but it's relatively small dollars and nice impact. And the underground garage and the 5th Street improvements are huge projects. And I just want to say thank you to the staff and to the Capital Improvements Committee for managing those with such grace and effectiveness that we're not wringing our hands over what could be tremendously difficult details. And I think sometimes we just kind of pass over those because they're running so smoothly, and the scale with which those are being pursued aren't really understood by people watching on cable TV or people in the room, or sometimes even DDA board members like me. So thank you very much. That being said, we had a very nice conversation at the Partnerships Committee with Police Chief Barnett Jones, and we wanted to talk to him about the current state of policing in the downtown. We wanted to talk to him about safety issues, both perceived safety issues and the actual statistics of safety. The very good news is the statistics of safety are very strong. Ann Arbor is a very safe place. The downtown in Ann Arbor is a very safe place. It's essentially the perception of the community is that it's safe, and the statistics for actual crimes that take place downtown also show that it's very safe. That being said, downtowns are places where young people can act enthusiastically, which can sometimes appear to be threatening, and folks who like to panhandle and hang out on streets that are sometimes a little troubling to certain majorities of our populations can be difficult. And so to make sure that we're ahead of the curve on those, we had a very good discussion with him. And I think we would all like on the DDA to have downtown patrols, to have walking patrols, bicycle patrols, a greater kind of presence, because the perception of safety, I think, many times is almost more important than the statistics of safety. We live in a society where the news that's reported in the newspapers and on television is not about the wonderful things that are going on or how safe things are, but how little tiny things may be the death of you. So I think perception is a very important thing to manage. So with the leniency that we have with our panhandling laws, although Joan Lowenstein on City Council did an excellent job of stiffening those up quite a bit, with the fact that there aren't police there all the time, sometimes I think the perceptions don't match the realities of safety downtown. And we had a nice discussion with Barnett Jones, and we will continue that discussion. But I want to assure everybody in the room, everybody watching, all the DDA members, that statistically, Ann Arbor is an extremely safe place. That's not to say that there aren't policing issues that we want to continue to address on an ongoing basis.
Just corollary to that, relative to the meeting that we had with the chief and the deputy chief yesterday with Ray, I think two things were said, both of those issues. Just statistics are low, and that's great. When the statistics are low, one or two bad apples can totally change that very quickly. When you're dealing with 60.
You're not talking about Ray specifically, though, right?
No. Ray's got a bunch of get out of jail free cards. So I mean that came up, is that some of the things we saw with the car arsons or with some break-ins at Sloan Plaza, those are the works of one or two individuals, and they can drastically skew numbers that are already very low. So I think that was to take into consideration, is because we could look at statistics next year that have double the crimes, and it was only the work of 2 or 3 people. It doesn't change the fact that it's safe or not. So I think it's careful to look at stats that are so low. The other thing that came out from Deputy Chief was the police force is phenomenally good at reacting. They statistically, they catch all the major people quickly and efficiently, but they really feel the pressure to be proactive. And a lot of what came out of the beat cops, and again, I'm evoking and paraphrasing what was said from the two officers in attendance, was that's where the reactive or the proactive. Maybe there could have been an armed robbery, maybe there couldn't have been if they knew that there were police officers there. The slippage at Liberty Plaza. The rules. While the panhandling was made strict, the people that are coming in are new and they don't know the ordinance. And the people that do know the ordinance know that there's not cops walking around regularly slapping their hands when they get out of control. And so I don't think it undercuts the need for patrol, given that the stats are good and the police are doing a really good job at 100 officers less than they had 10 years ago. So I just don't think we want to let it go by saying, oh, the stats are good.
Right, and I didn't frame it correctly, apparently, because we would all like bicycle patrols, beat cops restored. We do think that provides a very effective message to the citizens and to those nefarious people like Ray. I'm just kidding about that. Ray is not a nefarious person at all. But that safety is not only a statistic, but it's also a feeling and a sense of security. And so proactive or a presence can be beneficial.
We also talked briefly about tree pits and cigarette butts downtown, both of which have begun to have the city look just a little bit shabby, and the staff is going to noodle it around and see if there are grant opportunities for us to help businesses take care of the sidewalks in front of their spaces, perhaps. And back to you.
Yes, and our next meeting is Wednesday, September the 8th, so a week from today at 9 a.m. And at that meeting, apparently we're going to talk about skateboard parks, but I know for sure that we're going to talk about some very hard work that's been done by the DDA staff and the staff of the Shelter Association. We've been examining a request from the Delana Center for the last few months about a request that they have for funding, and it's a funding amount in and about the $300,000 category amount from our housing fund. The funds are there in terms of a balance in that account. And the staff and the DDA staff and the shelter staff have done some hard work, and we think that we're going to be able to help them out in ways that's productive for the Shelter Association and also meet the precedents and funding priorities of the Downtown Development Authority. So anyway, if you want to come and hear more about that, we will be discussing that at the meeting a week from today, as well as other interesting and important things, but not nearly as interesting and important as the big construction project.
Wouldn't want to put too fine a point on it, though.
Exactly.
Thank you, Russ.
You're just saying we need a bigger challenge.
No, it's all good. I'm just amazed at the capital improvements that this organization does, which is, oh yeah, here we go, and that is a mark of competence that I don't think we always recognize.
Thank you. Any other business matters anyone would like to propose? Other audience participation? Ray?
Just a couple comments to the whole board. Thanks for the skateboard park. Is it clear it's at the Vets Park or another location?
In terms of?
Your $50,000 grant.
As the resolution states, it could not be spent there.
Pardon me?
As the resolution is currently written, it could not be spent at the location of Vets.
Oh, so it has to be closer to downtown?
That money, as resolution is written, the money would have to be spent closer to downtown.
I guess my question is, why would you try to do 2 skateboard parks in town without another location for the skateboard park closer to downtown?
We could talk about this when the resolution comes back up.
Okay.
I'll talk to you
yeah,
offline.
I think it's a great idea, and they're trying so hard. They get park approval already for that site, and with your help would be a nice, to help it along, if you will, to get it going, and that's great. I just think to divide the effort at this stage, when they've worked so long, they've got the outside help bringing it in with a nice design so far to get it going. So anyway, for future thought. John, I went to one of the presentations by our new bus building. Some thought, particularly if Greyhound wants to get in there, they could use a little more room on that width. Would the DDA be agreeable to maybe 60 feet into the parking lot to give them a nice bigger footprint to help make it attractive to Greyhound, because they're just going to squeeze it in right now for their own buses.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have control over that.
Okay,
lot, so.
but the city council does, and you certainly maintain it.
Yeah.
So that's another thought that might make it real attractive to help make that partnership happen. One other thing, I'm on the board of the Elm Creek Greenway Conservancy. We saw a pretty neat presentation at our last meeting of a bike path starting at East Medical and coming down to U of M facilities. Now, you're kind of working on cars and buses, but the last bike path plan for the city was done in 2006. It's a pretty aggressive program that goes across city streets and flows down through the U of M campus. And with the quad opening, there's got to be a lot more bike traffic. So if you would be interested in seeing this presentation sometime, I can make it happen for you. It's pretty attractive, and with everything we've got going in the way of transportation, I think it might be helpful for your future thinking. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And thank you for letting us know about that. It's certainly something that when we discuss bike issues in the Transportation Committee, it would be really useful for us. Thank you a lot. Would someone like to move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.